Hello, everybody. Come on in. Good to see all of you today. I'm going to drop a quick poll. I want to see how many of you have been on a training with me before versus how many of you are brand new to doing training with Smart Sales Coaching or me, Dale Archdekin. So I'm going to drop a quick poll. Here we go. Launch. There we go. So do me a favor. You should have a little poll that pops up. I just want to see how many of you have been on training with us before versus how many of you haven't been on training with us before. So we're doing, this is Agent Locator basically is the sponsor of this training. And I'm going to introduce who I am and what my company does. But basically, we partner with Agent Locator. I know that some of you are Agent Locator users, their website, and some of you are not Agent Locator users. So I just wanted to see how many of you guys are new. We got a lot of new people here. All right. Yeah. So we are like almost 70% new people. Very cool. Okay. Let me just introduce who I am then. That way you have an idea of why you should listen to anything that I have to say. So I'm going to share my screen and show you our website where you can find us. As I said, my name is Dale Archdekin, and I'm the founder of Smart Sales Coaching. We are a scripting and dialogue training company that specializes in agents, real estate agents, inside sales agents. We also help teams and brokerages optimize their sales teams. So everything sales related when it comes to residential real estate, we specialize in that. Where that comes from is I was a long time listing agent, right? So and I'm in the US, I was cold prospecting for sale by owners, expired listings, door knocking, calling for rent by owners, and generating listings. And I got to the point where I could take on average between 6 to 7 new listings every single month by doing cold outreach. And another agent in my office came to me. He had a small team of 5 agents and they were doing about 100 transactions a year. At one point, he came to me and he said, "Hey, I've got this website. It's dumping leads out on the floor and my agents are lazy." And he said, "You're one of the best prospectors in the market. Will you come and help me convert these leads into deals?" And I said, "Hey, I'm flattered, but frankly, I'm getting burned out and I want to learn how to teach other people to do it." So we got together and we built at that time an inside sales department to help take the leads, convert them into appointments, and give them to our outside agents to go and shop with buyers, to go take listings. So we then scaled that team from 5 agents and 100 transactions to over 30 agents and over 650 transactions in a year. And that put us as the number 2 in the Philadelphia market. About 8 years ago, I took all those techniques and strategies, the training, the ability for me to be able to take a stranger off the street with no real estate experience and combine them with our average lead mix and our training and have them produce 60 transactions in their first 12 months with us. I took those techniques and strategies and built my coaching and training company from that. So for the last 8 years, we've been doing that for agents, brokerages, teams across the US and Canada. That's one of the reasons we're partnered with Agent Locator, because they have an amazing website. They also provide PPC services, lead generation services, and we are experts at lead conversion, the whole, the hard sales skills of scripting and dialogue. So if you want to know more about us and what we do, you can find our website here. Today is about negotiation skills. It's about negotiation strategies and perspectives that I'm going to be sharing with you guys. It's a little bit of a departure from what we normally do with my company. However, one of the things that we do, because it's all about language, it's all about presentation, it's all about communication, really, your sales skills for the most part are. One of the things that we do within my company when somebody first comes in and wants to do training with us, if they sign up, we do what's called a skills assessment, where we have them jump on with one of our trainers and the trainer tests them in 4 key areas around their introductions, how they get into a conversation, their objection handling, how they handle objections, how they approach the objection handling process, which negotiation falls into objection handling. Value proposition. If somebody said, "Why should I buy a home with you? Why should I list my home with you?" It's what you would say to them to sway them your way. And then testing you on your closing skill. So we call that a skill assessment. And what I'm going to do is at the end of today's presentation, if you guys stick around, I'm going to be talking about negotiation strategy, technique. If you stick around to the end, I'm going to show you how you can get a free skill assessment with one of my trainers if you want to do that. If you want to have them test you in those 4 key areas and give you feedback on where you can improve, where you can make some small tweaks to be able to set more appointments and close more of your deals, I'll show you at the end. Basically, I'll drop a poll at the end of the presentation. You'll just say, yes, I want to do a skill assessment, or no, I don't want to do a skill assessment. Make sense, everybody? Shake your faces up and down if that all registers. Okay, good. There we go. Look at Scott White. He's very excited about shaking his face up and down. Okay, I want to do this. I want to get from you guys. So today we're talking about negotiation. And for those of you who have been on an agent locator webinar with me before, we typically are very interactive, right? I'm teaching a concept and role playing a concept to make sure you're actually getting it and that you can use it out there in the streets. But today is going to be much more about me talking and giving you negotiation strategies, techniques, and perspectives. But first, what I want to ask is, where in negotiation is difficult for you? So, what types of negotiations do you find most difficult? And I'm talking about anything from negotiating for your commission with a new buyer or a new seller to getting your deal accepted for your buyer, or getting deals accepted by your seller, to getting through the inspections, getting around all the negotiations there. Where do you find it, and dealing with the agent on the other side? So let's see. Ellie said commission. Okay, how about you unmute yourself? I'm going to let you guys unmute yourself. Let me hear about it from you. Where are some of the struggles that you have around negotiation? Don't be shy.
Oh, okay. It's usually, when you get to meet people, there are only two things they want to know, right? It's first of all, what's the value of my property? And what's your commission? And get out. Pretty much that.
Wow.
Right?
All right, Ellie, I'm going to say that you probably are struggling with building rapport with people. How about that?
Well, I'm a very friendly person. And, like when they call, I received a call yesterday for a condo, and pretty much that was the conversation. And I said, well, let's get together and talk about commission. That's probably, I hear is very important to you. So we will tackle that, right? But you know what? Then it goes sideways. Are you charging 5% or 4.5%? That's what I want to know.
Got it. All right, I'm going to address that today. So commission. Thank you, Ellie.
Okay.
Who else? Who else? Go ahead and unmute yourself. Don't be afraid.
I have one.
Hi, Nabil.
Hi there. We already have an agent.
So that sounds like objection handling.
Yeah.
Do this, Nabil. At the end of this, we're going to do a skill assessment. I want you to say yes and do a skill assessment with one of my trainers, because they're going to talk specifically about objection handling. Okay.
Yeah.
So today, what I'm talking about is more around negotiation, which is much more like the person is engaged with you. And yes, I will touch on commission in terms of being negotiation. What Nabil just said to me, I have an agent, that's not a negotiation. That is an objection that we have a process for dealing with, that you probably need a process for dealing with. And both with you, Nabil, as with Ellie, where she said all they want to know is commission. With you, Nabil, they want to say, no, that's okay, I'm doing it with somebody else. It comes down to what we also call a value proposition. So I'm going to guess that if I asked either one of you, why should I list my house with you? Why should I sell my house with you? Whatever the answer is, probably isn't going to be that strong from you, and probably needs to be stronger. That's value proposition in addition to objection handling. So I want to direct you guys back to negotiation. And I appreciate you giving a suggestion. When we're talking about negotiation, I'm talking about getting your sellers to agree to an offer that's been made, getting the listing agent to go back to their sellers on behalf of your buyer to try and get the deal agreed to, right? Trying to bridge the gap between the differences between you and the listing agent, or you and the buyer's agent. Things like that. Those types of negotiations is what I'm talking about. Where do you guys run into any issues? I'll solicit one more. No? Okay. Let me get started. How about this? We'll
I
just
have one.
go ahead, Asim.
Um, usually when you're presenting a buyer and on the other end, the listing agent is very experienced and very well informed about that particular listing. And you seem to ask anything and they're right away they have the answer for it. I find it really hard to negotiate with those type of listing agents, even though they're doing the job the best to their ability for their particular clients and protecting their clients' interests. But it's kind of hard when you're up against somebody who's so on top of their game. How do
Got
you?
it. Asim, let me ask you this question. In your market, generally speaking, how many offers are there on each property?
Nowadays, if you're lucky, more than one, two or
Really?
three. Yeah.
So there's not 10 and 15 offers on properties in your market.
Currently, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Got it. Well, in that case, then when I'll definitely talk about this in terms of negotiation. I wasn't sure whether it was highly competitive or not highly competitive. It sounds like it's not highly competitive if you don't have a bunch of offers on a property. Correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. In that case, if the agent on the other side is not giving you any information or isn't, usually in my experience, in our clients' experience, if there aren't a bunch of offers on a property, the listing agents are much more amenable to helping you out because they want to get the deal done too. And you're saying that's not your experience?
No.
Interesting. Okay. So I'm going to give you a couple of questions today as I go through this that you may want to ask. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Asim. All right. So I want you guys to write a couple of things down. First of all, here's what I want you to write down. Negotiation is not a conflict. A lot of us tend to shy away from negotiation because we view it as a conflict. And, it feels that way, like there's a winner and a loser. And so that tends to cause us not to want to do it. Or on the flip side of that coin, when we have to go into a negotiation, we approach it as a conflict. We approach it as I either have to win and you have to lose, or I'm going to lose and I don't like that idea. So what I would say is that what I found is the most effective thing is to approach a negotiation not as a conflict, but more as a collaboration, as an attempt to make a relationship and carry out a relationship. Doesn't that sound great? Doesn't that sound wonderful? In reality, the reason it doesn't work that way quite often is because if we consider it a conflict, who else do you think generally considers it a conflict?
Clients.
The other side and our clients, anybody else involved in the negotiation. It's a human tendency to regard negotiation as a conflict. And so when I say things like regard it as a relationship or an opportunity to have, a productive sort of collaborative interaction, that sounds great and we can do that. But in a lot of cases, we get shut down because the other side is also regarding it as a conflict. So one of the most important things that you can do, first of all, is recognize that. Control your urge to make it a conflict. Control your urge to freak out or get offended or take it personally when the other side approaches it as a conflict. Some of the best negotiations that I've ever had or been in are where myself and the agent on the other side, or even my client and myself, are very collaborative, right? Have you ever noticed that? Like deals go so much better when you have a collaborative agent on the other side. That makes sense. That works great. The problem is, in a lot of cases, you don't, only because the other side may not have the same perspective that you have, or may not have the same skill set that you have, or the emotional intelligence that you have to make it a collaborative environment or to make it a collaborative endeavor. So a big thing is don't get triggered. You're going to have to manage your own emotions around those things. So give the other side grace if they are not making it collaborative. And part of what you can do is, I don't recommend pointing out to them that they are not being collaborative. We're going to talk about some other techniques and strategies on how to figure out what's important to the other side. And so this next point that I want you to write down is that negotiations are emotional. if you approach negotiations from an analytical standpoint, from a numbers standpoint, you typically are going to lose out. All negotiations involve some deal of emotional attachment. And it's emotional attachment from the agent on the other side. It's emotional attachment from the buyer or seller that are involved in the deal, as well as your client, right? So there's a lot of emotions going on. So when I say negotiation is not a conflict and you want to make it a collaboration, I just identified that in a lot of cases, the other side doesn't let you do that, or gets in the way of that, or doesn't understand the collaborative nature of working together. That gets exacerbated when they're operating from emotion. So I want you to write down this. What's most important to the co-op agent? What's most important to the client, their client? What's most important to your client? How are they operating emotionally? What emotions are at play? What's most important to the agent on the other side? How are they operating emotionally or not? Right. So we just said it's best when they aren't, right? And they're collaborative, which is great. And as much as you can, figure out how their clients are operating emotionally. And that can come down to just asking some simple questions where, if we're talking about feelings, if we're talking about emotions, asking things like, how does your buyer or seller feel about X? That's a good question that you can ask, right? When we're in wherever we're at in the negotiation, whatever's going on, whatever the issue is, whatever the sense of loss is, what's important to them about X? How do they feel about X? What if X can't happen? How will they feel? What will they do? What is their alternative? What if X can't happen? And I'm not giving super specific examples. I'm just giving you a framework for how to understand that what you're trying to do is you're trying to get down to the emotional heart of what's driving decisions or what's driving reactions. Okay. The other thing about feelings and reactions is as you're perceiving what's going on. So if the agent on the other side is being short with you, if the agent on the other side is arguing against your points, arguing against you, arguing against valuations, arguing against your offer, arguing against your terms, then you can just if you can label what's going on, if you can say, hey, and I'm going to give you these 3 words: seems like, looks like, sounds like. Seems like, looks like, sounds like. It sounds like you disagree with my buyer's perception of value here. Sounds like you aren't interested in putting my offer in front of your clients. If you can label it, a lot of times it will take down some of the intensity of it. And a couple of things actually happen when you label things like that. And I find this even, I told you guys I was a cold prospector. I even found this when I would be cold prospecting people. Hey, it sounds like you just really don't want to talk to a salesperson, right? If I could call out the other person's emotion or perspective or feelings, a lot of times it minimized them. Not minimized in a bad way. What I'm saying is it took down the intensity. And it also makes the other party look at what they're doing and not in an accusatory way, because they can't really argue with you when you say, oh, it looks to me like this is what's going on, or I feel like this is what's going on, or it seems like this is what's going on. So they evaluate what they're doing and they can either adjust or they can double down and give you more explanation. But either way, it takes a lot of the intensity out of it. Okay. Let's go to this point that I want you to write down. Fear of loss is 2 times as powerful as gain. Fear of loss is twice as powerful as gain. And these all go into helping you craft how you talk or how you react. So when I say fear of loss is more powerful than gain, basically, the experience for somebody of losing $5 outweighs and is even more powerful than the gain of $10 or more, right? Like that a lot of people make decisions based on the fear of loss because it's so much more powerful. So when you're negotiating, when you're trying to figure out the other side, or when you're trying to come back, or you're trying to make a proposition, hopefully that will help, if you can recognize that people more often are operating on a fear of loss, then when you get stuck somewhere in a negotiation and you can't understand why the other side is fighting you or not agreeing, or is even getting angry about what's going on, they probably have a sense of loss. They're experiencing some form of loss, whether it's around money, whether it's around pride, whether it's around ego, whether it's around even, one of the things that, as I was thinking about this presentation today, I know a lot of people who operate and react solely so that they don't appear to be wrong. They don't want to appear to be wrong in their answers. They don't want to appear to be wrong in their valuation of a listing when they pick a listing price. They don't want to appear to be wrong to their sellers. So, a listing agent goes, talks to a seller. Hey, seller, I think this is what it's going to sell for. Offers come in. The number's not what they said to that seller. Sometimes those listing agents want to make those offers wrong. Have you noticed that? Listing agent wants to make the offers wrong so that the listing agent can preserve their own pride around not appearing to be wrong. So how can you change, or how can you spin your offer or your negotiation or your counter offer, whether it's money, whether it's terms, whatever it is, in a way that highlights more than 2 times of a gain? Does that make sense? If there is a loss and there's a perception of loss and the other party is operating based on a fear of loss, how can you amplify the gain side? What will they gain? What can you allow them to gain? So you know how, like, when you're negotiating things, you'll say, hey, these 1 2 things here are most important to my buyer, and we'll give you back that one thing. Right? It's just as a way to offset the ask or to offset the sense of loss from the other party. It's that kind of concept. How can you pump up or highlight the gain that the other party will get, or can you create for them to help to mitigate or reduce the sense of loss or fear of loss they're experiencing, that they're reacting negatively to, that they're opposed to? Okay. Somebody had a question in the chat. Let me see here. Chat. Out of curiosity, is there supposed to be a shared screen or slideshow? No. Nope. I'm just talking. Luke, this is not one of those presentation slidey things, and it's not one of those interactive role play things that I normally do. This is me giving you guys advice around negotiation, and you should be taking notes. So hopefully you're not driving a car or operating heavy machinery. Okay. Let's see here. Buyers asking for cash back. I'm in an environment where, yep. Okay. Got it. There's one more that I want to point out. Value versus problem solving. So I'll give you an example here. I want you guys to come up with a number. I'm going to ask you to come up with a dollar value in your heads. I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to assign a dollar value to it, whatever you think. There's no right or wrong answer. You don't have to chat it in. What is sales coaching worth to you? Assign a dollar value in your head. Okay. Now, I'm going to give you another scenario around sales coaching, and I'm going to ask you to assign a value. If I said, hey, we role play with you 2 times a week, how much would that be worth? We do sales role play twice a week. How much would that be worth? Come up with a number in your head. What if I then said, gave you another scenario? We have a system that we teach our students on how they can sell 60 homes in a year. That's a guaranteed process that's already helped hundreds of agents each year achieve those results, and without a massive investment in time or money. How much would that system be worth to you? That coaching system, just the number that you're thinking about. So I just did this exercise. What I know is that you assigned different values to the things that I just described, and all of them were sales coaching, right? The vague description would have one value. The couple of times a week role play is going to have one value. And then the system that sells a bunch of homes and has a proven track record has probably a much higher value. That's the way that most of you assigned your values. And I'm just doing this exercise to demonstrate for you how value is fluid for the people that you are talking to. And this becomes especially true when we're talking about commissions and when we're talking about the value of a property. So value is fluid based on perception. Now, what I said is this little piece that I'm telling you about now is value versus problem solving. Because when we get into a negotiation, if somebody is asking you to reduce your commission, if somebody's asking you to reduce the price, if somebody wants to pay you less for something, your service or your good, whatever it may be, generally it's either a value problem, either they don't see the value in what you're doing or offering or the value of the object, or they are trying to problem solve. What do I mean by problem solve? Problem solve, I mean when they don't have the money, if they can't afford it, right? If they can't swing the payment, if they don't qualify for it, if they can't sell the property and pay your fee all in the same shot and still accomplish whatever their goals are. That's where, when you're approached or when you're in a situation where somebody wants you to reduce a price, reduce your commission, whatever it may be, the first thing you want to figure out is this a value problem or is this a problem solving issue? I'll put it back in the context of my coaching company. People come to us and want to do training with us. Or let me say this more clearly or more accurately. Some people want to know what we do and whether they want to buy what we do. Some people come to us already convinced, thinking they know what we do, and they're convinced that it will work for them. And so with those two different camps, what we have is when I talk to somebody who comes and asks what we do, they don't know who we are. They've never experienced our material before. I know that if they ask me right away how much it costs, do you think they have an appropriate or informed context to decide what we charge makes sense or doesn't make sense? If they don't know what we do, don't have an experience of our material, and don't know who we are, the answer is no. They don't have a context to decide whether what we charge is worth it or makes sense or is a good value. So likewise, let me put it into context of you. If you're talking to, who was it? It was Ellie. Ellie, somebody calls you up and says, hey, I want to sell my house. How much do you charge? Ellie, do they have any frame of context to be able to decide whether what you charge makes sense or not? No, they don't. They can't. And so in that case, you want to do the best that you possibly can not to answer that question. And even to the point where if you have to say to them, hey, I can't answer that question for you. How much do I charge? I don't know exactly what you want done, what outcome you're looking for, and how much work on my part you would like to ensure the best outcome possible. That's all going to determine how much I charge you. So Ellie's like writing that down. This is recorded. Don't worry. But and that's not scripted. I'm saying that because the truth is you can't give them a number because they can't put context around it. They would have to understand what they're buying in order to decide whether they should spend that money. They would have to understand what service they're going to get, what outcome they're going to get in order to place an appropriate value on it before they can make a decision. So especially when you're in a negotiation situation, figure out first, is this a value question or a lack of value perception? Or is it a problem solving question? Like when I go and sit with a seller back in the day before property values were through the roof, where a seller would say, I owe almost what this property is worth. And then when I tack on taxes and fees and your commission, I have to come to the table with money out of my own pocket, right? and they say, I'm asking you to reduce your commission so that I can actually get this sold and take less money out of my pocket. So that's a problem solving approach to the negotiation, right? Whether or not you take that listing, whether or not you negotiate your fee, that's up to you. However you deal with that, that's a business decision on your part. What I'm here just to simply help you understand, first thing you got to figure out is this a perception of value issue, or is it a problem solving issue? And then on top of that, we just have different types of people. So figure out problem solving versus value issue. Then what kind of person are you talking to? Okay. You've got the kind of person who values your services, right? And they're asking for a specific reason for a reduction or a price, price reduction, commission reduction, whatever it is. They value you, but for some reason they're asking. In that case, it might be a problem solving issue. Or you've got those people who just don't know how it works. Any of you here, I mean, I know most of you are probably Canadian, but would you be surprised that when I was calling for sale by owners, and even now, sometimes when you call up a for sale by owner, you determine that they don't hate agents, that they're not opposed to agents. They say, I just didn't know how else to get started putting my home on the market other than selling it myself, right? You just have people who don't know how it works. Meanwhile, I'm like, oh my God, like everybody knows 10 agents. How do you not know somebody who could have listed your house for you? But you have people who just don't know how it works. So you have people who will ask about your commission or question the price that you give them for a listing price for a home, or even buyers, right? This happens so often where buyers are like, oh my God, I can't pay X for that house. And you say, well, why can't you pay X for that house? Well, it's not worth it. How did you determine it's not worth that? Right? They have no idea. When you're like, there's a line of people down the street who are paying even more than this for that house. That house is going to go 50, 60, $100,000 over asking. So your perception of value is way off. But there are people who just don't know how it works. They don't know what houses are worth. They don't know what real estate agents cost. They don't know how commission works. So they're going to ask you just mostly out of ignorance. Then you've got the people who don't value you. Specifically, they do not value you. They do not value your service. They do not value the property. And those kind of people, they're just the perception of value is very low. So you want to kind of work on where's your perception of value and can I improve it? So the whole point of understanding who they are is, as I pointed out when I was talking about Ellie's situation, or even my own with somebody who comes to my company and says, how much do you charge for training? Who doesn't know anything about it? I don't give them a number. So when I'm talking about these different people here, I'm not going to engage in a negotiation. I'm going to delay my engagement in the negotiation around giving up concessions or numbers until I can figure out who you are and how you're operating. Right? Do I need to improve your perception of value? Do I need to educate you about how it works? And then you've got this other category of person, the fourth one, which are just those people that are real tight asses. The people who are win-lose people, where it doesn't matter how cheap it is, they're going to ask for a discount, right? You know those people. My brother-in-law is one of those people. You could like squeeze a tear out of a nickel. You're just like, come on, man. So in any, with those kind of people, it's like, well, once I determine that that's who you are, you're just going to do it. You're just going to ask whether it makes sense or not. Then it just comes down to whether I'm going to tell you no, or whether I'm going to entertain you, or whether I'm going to give you a bottom line number and say, hey, beyond this line, we're not going to go past it. So understanding who the person is really helps you to kind of pre-frame what you're going to do before you actually get into the negotiation with them. Is that helpful? Yes? Okay. And let's talk more about commissions. Commission negotiations begin very early. Okay. Commission negotiations begin before you even talk to somebody about it, before they even bring it up. And oftentimes commission negotiations start with other agent. So the example that Ellie gave, pretty classic example, right? Hey, all I want to know is how much your commission is. How do you think that consumer was already prepared to ask her, is it this number or that number? It's because he's already had conversations with other agents. That's how. And so what you want to figure out is, What is their education? How educated are they? How have they been educated, and what's their experience been so far? And what are they valuing? And so, one of the things I'd probably ask, let's just put us into the situation of Ellie, right? The person says, hey, how much is your commission? Is it 4.5% or 5%? I might ask them what they're buying. Before we talk commission or money, tell me what you're buying, because clearly you've talked to some other agents and you have an idea of what services you want to purchase. What is it you're looking to purchase? And I'm just changing the words out of commission and things like that into what are you buying? What are you purchasing? Change the context of the conversation so that you can get them to reveal their cards. Right? Because if you think that you're buying a certain thing and you're coming to me wanting to know how much I'm going to price a certain thing at, I'm going to try and change the context. I'm going to try and sell you something different that you don't have a value for already. Does that make sense, everybody? If you think you're buying green apples and you want to pay 10 cents for a green apple, I'm going to sell you bananas at 50 cents a piece. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. And the whole another point of that, commissions begin early. Commission negotiations begin early. As much as you can, remember how I talked about those 4 key areas that we test people on? One of them being objections and one of them being value proposition. Your value proposition, the way that you present yourself, the materials that you have, the way you position what service you provide has a massive impact on how much or how little you have to negotiate your commissions and what you charge. Let me go back to the example of somebody coming to us for training. When they have no context, when they don't know what our material is, when they don't know who we are, when they don't know who we do business with, the biggest providers and biggest companies in the industry, and they ask, how much is your training? I immediately know that they do not have enough context. And so they haven't been appropriately positioned with our value propositions. The easiest people who come to us are like, oh my God, I've been following you for years. I literally teach my people your stuff. It makes such a difference. I want to come and do live training with you. At that point, we just say, okay, cool. MasterCard or Visa. There's not a lot of conversation around it. How do I put that into context for you? Pre-listing packets, your website, your marketing materials, your email drip campaigns, all the messaging that you're sending to buyers, all the messaging you're sending to sellers. That is your opportunity to position yourself and position your value. Even if somebody called you out of the blue, I would probably, of course, I'm going to have a conversation with them. I'm going to pre-qualify them. I'm going to build rapport with them. But before we made a decision to move forward, or before I gave pricing or got into that arm of sort of negotiation, I might send them over some materials and ask them to review it. And those materials predominantly are for positioning you, positioning your message, elevating your status, and demonstrating mastery and demonstrating a track record of success. Because those are the things they need to see to help them make a value judgment of you, which will alleviate pressure off of your commission negotiation. And this is one thing I discovered a long time ago when carrying 20 listings at a time, is that if I called my sellers and interacted with them every single week, even if I didn't have anything new to tell them, that it made it vastly easier for me to get a price reduction from them when the time came. Because I had been touching on them, because I had been pre-framing them, because I had been demonstrating value, interacting with them and providing some measure of value, even if it was, hey, I'm still here working on your behalf, right? Same concept. If you can pour into people, if you can position them, if you can put that information in front of them to help persuade them, there's a great book you should actually get called Persuasion. Write that down, Persuasion. It's a little dry, but he does tell some good stories in there, and kind of the power of persuading people makes a huge difference. It takes a lot of pressure off the things that you have to negotiate around. Okay, couple tips for you. Within your buyer presentation, your buyer marketing, your website, your positioning, your seller pre-listing packet, I'm going to give you a couple of bullet points that I want you to write down, and I want to make sure that you cover these things inside your marketing. So for buyers, I want you to write down money, speed, convenience, safety, liability, and timing. I'm going to repeat it. Money, speed, convenience, safety, liability, and timing. Most of you, when you're talking to buyers or sellers, you frequently talk about the process. You talk about it in the abstract. You talk about it in the factual. What I want you figuring out from your buyer and seller clients, and buyers specifically right now, is what is their concern around money? What are their desires around money? What are their concerns or desires around speed? Meaning like speed of execution, speed of interaction, speed of communication. What are their desires, their concerns around convenience? How easy do they want it, right? How convenient do they want it? Around safety, do they have concerns around safety as a buyer? Both functionally, from going and looking at property to making offers, committing themselves, being stuck in a contract, being stuck in a binding legal document. What are their concerns around liability, right? What they're buying a structure that takes up space in the world around other people. What concerns do they have around liability? And then timing. How would they like these things to fall? How would they like them to go? The reason that I'm putting this out there is because most of us typically talk, as I said, factually about how the process goes. And somehow we want that to wow the buyers, right? Well, if you can be different and you're interviewing your potential client, or you're talking to your potential client, or you're even promoting to these potential future clients how you handle these types of things: money, speed, convenience, safety, liability, and timing, in a way that sets you apart from the other agents that are marketing in your market, or in a way that's different from the way that they've talked to other agents before. It really sets you apart and elevates your value, which, if your value is elevated, means that you negotiate less, right? Or not at all. Okay. I'm going to add one more for sellers to those that I listed, which is marketing. Because buyers don't really care about marketing. Sellers care about marketing. Okay. Last couple of things. Don't ever, when somebody asks you for a number, asks you for a discount, asks you for a reduction, never give the first number. Never give the first number. Let them set the baseline between relatively acceptable to absolutely crazy. Okay? So ask them for the number first if they want a discount or a reduction. And then there's a strategy. This guy, who here has heard of Chris Voss? You ever heard of Chris Voss? Never split the difference. A technique that I learned from him that works really well is ask the person how you can do that. Hey, would you consider reducing your commission? What did you have in mind? I'm going to ask you for the number. Let's say you give me a number. Let's make it 0.25%. And you're going to ask them, how can I do that? Tell me how I can do that. How's it possible that I could do that? And just see what they say. Keep asking them until they can't come up with an answer. They will abandon that concept very quickly. And I'm just joking around the hat, 0.25%. But my point is, you can ask that into the face of anything. Full disclosure, I actually, so my brother and I don't get along, and he's one of the most stubborn people I know on the planet. And we were having an argument about something. And basically, I said, hey, this is the position that you're putting me in. How can I do that? And I just literally kept repeating to him, this is the position you're putting me in. How can I do that? To the point where he eventually stopped arguing with me and then started apologizing. So to get one of the most stubborn people I know on this planet outside myself to back down from a position and then start apologizing by simply repeating a phrase is pretty powerful stuff. Okay. All right. The only other thing is do not ever bring up your commission as a bargaining chip at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end. That is the last thing you should ever do or discuss. And if the co-op agent is that weak, then you need to help them. Talk them out of doing that. Talk them out of promoting that. Because one thing I know from many years of experience is you can't want the deal more than the buyer and seller want the deal. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay, good. All right, everybody. Who's the author? Sorry, Ellie, what book was it? I mentioned Persuasion. Cialdini is his last name. Caildini, I think. Something Cialdini. Yeah. Robert Cialdini. That's it. There we go. All right, everybody. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys. I know the whole talking head presentation thing is tough. I haven't come up with a good way to role play negotiations as a game, but I take it as a challenge to do that because I feel like we need to for my training company. And as I mentioned, everybody, if you stuck around until the end, I was going to show you how you could do a free skill assessment with one of my trainers. So I'm going to drop the poll and then I'm going to explain to you what the skill assessment is and how you can go about taking advantage of it. So let me drop the poll. And the poll is basically just going to ask, do you want to do a skill assessment for yourself or for your team, or do you want to not want to do one? So the skill assessment basically is a Zoom meeting where you jump on with one of our trainers, and we have a pre-formatted set of role plays that we go through with you. As I mentioned, in our training company, we've identified that for salespeople, there are 4 core skill sets that you have to master to help you better convert your leads into appointments and into closings. And those 4 are introductions, how you get into a conversation, how you insert your, how you start a conversation with a lead, whether you're cold calling your leads, or even at an open house, face to face. Your introductions, how do you do that and how well do you do it? That sets the tone. Your objection handling approach, if somebody says no, not yet, not with you, not under these circumstances, what your objection handling approach is, how you approach it. There's a good way and a bad way. And then your value proposition. If I went around the room and I asked you guys, hey, why should I buy a house with you? Why should I list my house with you? I feel like it would be kind of funny, some of the answers that we heard, which is sad, but it's true. And it happens to a lot of people. So value propositions, how good or bad your value proposition is, how good or bad you can answer that question. And then closing, right? How you tee up a close, meaning a next step, a meeting. How do you ask for a face-to-face with a buyer or seller, or a next step? How well or poorly do you do that? So you jump on, you do the role plays with the trainer, and the trainer gives you feedback, gives you tips and strategies where you can improve immediately to be able to convert more of your leads, keep them in a conversation with you, convert them into an appointment, and get to more closings with them. So just answer the poll. If you can't find the poll, it is at the bottom of the screen. If you go to polls and quizzes, click there and you can find the poll. And just say whether you want to do a skill assessment with us. And we can do them for a team, or we can do them for you as a solo agent if you're a solo. Any questions about skill assessments? Okay. How about this? Give me one thing that you got out of today's webinar about negotiation strategies. Feel free to unmute yourself and go first. What's one thing you got out of today?
Yeah, pretty much when somebody asks point blank without even knowing who you are, or or the work you do, just ask point blank about the commission you charge. I think that is valuable information that you gave. Don't give an answer.
Yeah,
Don't
good.
give.
And in fact, Ellie, ask them a question.
Right.
Ask them what they're buying. What commission do you charge? What are you buying? Well, I want you to list my house. Great. What kind of services would you like around your home being listed and what outcome are you looking for? Ask them questions.
Right, right. So that's very valuable.
Good. Excellent. I'm glad that's valuable
It's
to
also
you.
the perception out there that realtors are all the same, that we all offer the same, so we become a commodity.
Yeah.
Right? We become a commodity, and so the one who offers the least amount of money commission, they figure that they have saved money. But
Yeah,
they don't
right.
look at the other side, they have probably lost money.
Absolutely. Amen, sister. Who else? Who else got something out of today? Share with the group.
Gail, can I
Daniel.
ask a quick question?
Oh, yes, Julia. Let's go with
I'm
Julia, and then we'll go
sorry,
with
I
Daniel
interrupted
Mondrell.
someone. Sorry about that. I had a quick question. In the good old days, we've always been trained not to talk about commission, not to talk about the detail on the phone until you get an appointment and get into, to explain the value proposition and create a rapport and all those good things until you discuss the commission aspect. I guess my question is, would you still advise that? Or has the world changed enough that we need to make it efficient even for ourselves as realtors? And, maybe go through the question and some sort of rapport building on the phone and talk about the commission, or not do it at all, try to schedule an appointment and, through the questions you're suggesting.
All
And
right,
not
so
even touch on commission on the phone at all.
okay, so it's difficult to give one standard answer, everybody. And here's why. Just like I talked about today, there's different kinds of people. So you're going to have people who are going to ask you, what's your commission? And they're going to ask you because they think they're supposed to, or they're going to ask you because they don't know any better. Then it's, pretty much within a range, pretty standard across the board, right? There's going to be those people. And then there's going to be people who are asking you specifically because they want to negotiate the commission with you over the phone. And then there's going to be those people who only want to pay the least amount they possibly can, and all they're doing is looking for the lowest number. So I can't give you a standard, right? Because you've got a lot of different types of people that you're talking to. So generally a best practice, as I was alluding to, is we don't talk about price until I've established value or I've understood your understanding of value, right? So that's my general rule. If I get one of those really jerky people on the phone who, as I was teaching Ellie, ask them questions back. What are you buying? What are you looking for? What value are you seeking? What results do you want? If they're like, cut the shit, sales guy, I don't want any more of that stuff. You either give me a number that I'm willing to hear and I will meet with you, or you're going to give me a number I don't want to hear and I'm not going to meet with you. In that case, it becomes a business decision, right? So then, I have a minimum that I'm going to do, that I would charge to do business with anybody. What I first might say is, I might say, first of all, I'm not certain that I want to do business with you. What I might say is, why don't you answer some of my questions so that I can determine whether or not I choose to do business with you, and then we can talk about the number. So I might take a hard line with them to see if I can punch them in the face and turn the conversation around. Or maybe you're standing in line at the grocery store and you really don't give that shit much of a shit anymore. And you say, listen, the least I'm going to do anything for you for, or even drive to your house, is X. Here's your number. Do what you want. I got other people to talk to. It's a business decision that you have to make. So I can't give one answer, if that's fair.
Thank you.
Is that helpful at all?
It is.
Okay. And also it's my personality type, right? I'm definitely a type A. I play a normal human being on webinars, but I can easily, turn that off and just be like, oh, let's monkey knife fight. Let's do it. Okay. Thank you. Daniel, you wanted to share something you got out of today.
Yes. What came in up front for me was how I present myself right from the beginning. I think I got to keep that more in mind. And the big question for me is always, who am I dealing with? That's very important, and keep that at the forefront as well. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. Absolutely. Thanks, Daniel. And you know what? Where'd she go? Julia. I also thought about one thing just as yeah, I guess I was multitasking as Daniel was telling us what he got out of today. But let's say somebody was pushing, on the phone and they weren't presenting as a jerk, but they were just more matter of fact about it. If they were like, listen, I've done this before. I've talked to multiple agents. Here's what they're willing to charge. I might take a more reasonable approach to that. But first I would explain myself. And I would say something like, well, I appreciate that. I don't normally work with people whose only value is what they spend up front. But I typically work with those people who are much more invested in the long-term rewards of working with a top producing agent like myself. With that being said, if you insist on knowing what range I charge, it's between this and this. If you're interested in talking with me about how I get higher than normal or higher than average returns for my clients, I'm happy to do that. So again, that was just a little more sophisticated, civilized, turn it back around on them and make them wrong for asking and then give them some form of answer. Okay.
I like that.
Good. You like that
Thank
one?
you. Yes, I do.
And sometimes it is fun to yell at people, by the way. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. Great seeing all of you. If you wanted to do a skill assessment, it looks like you answered the poll. We got a bunch of people who want to do that. We will send you an email that has a link. You'll just fill out a quick survey, and then we will book a Zoom call to help you through and work on your skills and help you improve them. All right, everybody. Great talking to you. Thanks for joining me.